in here. It's always Friday. TGI Fridays, 3330 Veterans Boulevard, corner of North Holland in Metairie, where SportsNOLaTv originates this evening. And a pleasant good evening to you. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLA.com for SportsNOLaTv. As always, great to be here at TGI Fridays, where they treat us great and where they will treat you great. It's been a great weekend for New Orleans. Lots going on. French Quarter Fest, enormous sports activities, and of course the most significant of which was the purchase of the New Orleans Hornets by Tom Benson, who becomes a plurality owner in New Orleans in terms of Major League franchises. We'll get into this topic extensively a bit later in the show. One announcement made today, New Orleans getting the 2014 All-Star Game in the NBA. Second time they will have hosted it in 6 years. This is all part of the ownership of Tom Benson. Brian Ellie Walsh, SportsNOLA.com. Is always a pleasure. Good to know the Hornets are going to stay here with local ownership and have the NBA All-Star Game here.
Absolutely, Kenny. It's, again, we applaud Tom Benson for stepping to the plate and giving that hometown interest to this team. I think it's what the Hornets really need.
Al Dupuy of Draft Day Report, our special guest today. Al, as always, a pleasure. Great to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here. The food's good and the company's good.
It really is. That's good. Torrance Small, former Saints wide receiver. Nice to have an All-Star Game coming back. Nice to have local ownership. Now about that name. We need a name, right?
Yes, we need a name. I would love to go back and get the Jazz if we could, but unfortunately we're not able to get that name. Hopefully we can come up with something that'll fit the city.
Brian, do you have any ideas for a name for the Hornets?
Well, I'm probably with all you guys. I'd like to see a new name too. I'd like to give it our own stamp. I'd like Mr. Benson to certainly be heavily involved in the selection. If a deal could be, you know how when draft picks come on or new players come on board teams and they negotiate with existing players that have a number that they want, maybe Mr. Benson could enter into some kind of negotiations with the Jazz, and they could buy that. It's a wonderful name. It belongs to our basketball team.
No question. Everything's for sale, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Al, your thoughts? Any name that comes to mind?
He's got the money to do it if they decide to do that. But if Zataran gets involved in it, naming the arena or something like that, how about the Spice?
I like that. I like that.
And then I guess the dancing girls would be maybe the Chili Peppers or something. I don't know.
But you couldn't use Red Hot though, right? Okay. Can't do that, unfortunately. I'll tell you, there are a lot of good names, a couple of good names that have been out there. The Voodoo, of course, in use already. The Brass was a good name. Jazz makes the most sense. But I got one on our radio show this past Saturday that Ed Daniels and I both like quite a bit, and that's Revelers. Revs for short, Revelers for long. Lots of implication, including Mardi Gras. Even spiritual. Hey, Rev, right? You got a lot of implications there, and I think it works pretty well. How about those colors? Will they really stay Creole blue? Stay tuned. And stay tuned for us, because when we return in just a moment, we'll talk about the Saints' new interim coach, their new setup, and where they're going without Sean Payton as SportsNOLaTv continues from TGI Fridays in Metairie. Very good statistic, because typically speaking, an interim head coach does not start a season. It happens when a coach is dismissed in midseason, which has happened in Saints history, of course, as you know, many times, or resignation, whichever one you want to choose. Jim Mora quit midseason. Bum Phillips quit late in the 1985 season to give his son, Wade Phillips, an opportunity. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLaTv from TGI Fridays in Metairie. The Saints starting their off-season work unofficially. Of course, OTAs are still to come, but they start work, and they do so without Drew Brees. He is unsigned. Brian, he's actually in New York meeting with NFLPA officials today.
Yeah, I guess there's a good reason why he's in here, but he wasn't coming anyway. But yeah, he and Scott Fujita of the Browns, formerly the Saints, are meeting with NFLPA Executive Director DeMaurice Smith. So You know what? Stay tuned. That's all we can say at this point. Stay tuned. It looks like there could be some sanctions, player sanctions coming down this week, so we'll see what happens.
Torrance, I've got to believe that this is a very, very, very awkward situation for Roger Goodell in the NFL, because the Players Association will contest and fight anything he comes down with here, unlike the situation with the coach and front office personnel.
Oh, definitely. The players are going to fight. One thing we do, we stay together, especially when it comes to players being fined or being suspended. One thing they're going to have to prove, and one thing they're going to have to show that I've been saying for a while is, show us some evidence. Show me something where these guys are playing, doing something that's dirty, that's outside of football. Not something that is close, but something that's totally outside of football. I haven't seen any evidence yet. Plenty of film show that, and from what we're hearing, they haven't even told the NFLPA what they really know.
The NFLPA issues a statement, Al, and the last line of it is, to date, the NFL has not provided the NFLPA with detailed evidence of the existence of such a program.
That's amazing, isn't it? And I think that it's going to be a lot more difficult for Roger Goodell to suspend the players than the coaches, because they're going to say also that we were coerced to do this. You know, where's the proof? It didn't the verbiage didn't translate to the field. I remember sitting at the 49er game and saying, are we ever going to hit the quarterback in this game? You know? So, I mean, it sounds good to fire up the players with some of the stuff that Greg Williams said, but did it translate to the field? And the players are going to say, prove it.
Brian, they tune you out all the time. I mean, it's in one ear and out the other, or they don't listen at all because they get tired of the same gospel.
Al said this a couple of months ago on the show about he had heard that players were tuning Greg Williams out. So, you know, Kenny, this has the potential to become very nasty. I could see the players unifying much more so over this topic than I can of the strike and the labor negotiations, because the rhetoric and the semantics used with regards to Bountygate, and like Al just suggested, is that, you know, you have to prove that there was malice, there was intent to harm and injure other players, and it's going to be awfully hard to prove. You can say all you want, but if I'm a player on another team and they dictate how I play, you know, that's something that can unify everybody. I think this could get real nasty.
Oh yeah, believe me. One thing we know for sure, I can put my money on this: a player will not be suspended this year, because they will appeal and they might be suspended, but a player will not have a suspension this year. They will not miss it down because of this suspension. It will be appealed, and I don't think it's going to uphold. Again, show me the evidence. I've been saying it for the longest. I don't see any evidence out there, and I don't think they have it.
So this could carry on like star caps and be deferred for quite some time.
Exactly, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I don't think anybody's going to miss anything. It'll be a big fuss, as you say. It's going to hit the fan. It's going to be a big fuss, a big thing about it. But nobody wants serve a suspension this year.
Well, the Saints have made their decision about who's going to run this football team. At least initially, it's going to be Joe Vitt. And it's not a surprise to those who follow the Saints. Joe Vitt, with an extensive resume, including being an interim head coach previously. So as a result, when you look at what Vitt has done, where he's been, you understand that he's capable of doing this. He's also the most trusted assistant of Sean Payton. As mentioned, the interim coach for the Rams for the final 11 games of the 2005 season. So, Brian, while it's no surprise, the methodology is a bit curious, since Vitt has to serve a 6-game suspension to start the regular season.
Yeah, in a sense, I have mixed feelings about Vitt. I think he's the easy choice for Sean Payton because he's his first lieutenant. He doesn't detract from a Pete Carmichael with offensive game planning, or Aaron Cromer, who's involved in the run game, or Steve Spagnuolo, the first-year defensive coordinator. So it's an easy transition for all involved. But in a sense, you're rewarding a guy who's a significant role player in Bountygate. So I'm kind of mixed about it. It sends out a bad message to me. Is that what we're trying to accomplish here, though?
That's what I was going to ask Al. I mean, is this part of the Saints saying, we'll show you, and here's the guy we choose?
That could be possible. You know, what happens if, say, the Saints come out of the gate and they win 5 or 6 games? Then you have to change over to another coach. Do you want to disturb things? You know, that's going to be kind of touchy right there.
Yeah. I'm surprised by the pick because me just looking at it, I think it's a lot of moving parts. You know, I know we're just looking at the coaching part of it right now, but you also have your GM Loomis won't be around. Who's going to take his position? Because guys get hurt, people get injured, things go on within the team. You bring in players in and out. You don't have a head coach that won't be there for the first 6 games. You have a GM that won't be there for the first 8 games. It's a lot of moving parts. I'm surprised by it. Am I okay with it? Yes, I'm okay with it. I think it's an easy choice, like Brian said. I think it's an easy choice to have somebody within. But you have a lot of moving parts to this thing. Who else going to run this ship while these 2 guys are going to be out?
Well, it's going to be a very interesting year, to say the least. The Saints are still among the top 3 to 4 teams in terms of favorites to get to the Super Bowl, despite all of this. So they're very highly thought of still with what has transpired. And it's a double-edged sword. If the Saints do well, then people are going to scratch their heads about, well, is Sean Payton really worth all that? I think he is, based upon what we know about what he has contributed. At the same time, that thought process would come into play. On the other hand, if they don't do well, it only enhances who he is and the image that he has. I cannot fathom any way that the Saints don't have a winning season. Whether they can go beyond that and win playoff games and threaten to make the Super Bowl is another story. That's what remains to be seen. Well, in terms of schedules, the NFL schedule is due to come out any time now. We expect it will likely come out this week. We know the opponents, Brian, that the Saints will be playing this year. And the home schedule, of course, is one that includes the 49ers, which ought to be very interesting with them coming to town this year. The away schedule, very interesting as well. You've got to go to Dallas, to Jerry World. You got to go play the Super Bowl champions on the road, the team that had the best record in the league in the Packers last year, and Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos, as well as going to the West Coast to play the Raiders. A very challenging road schedule.
Absolutely, Kenny. And when you look at it, there's a number of teams that are aspiring to win a Super Bowl off that schedule. And as the offseason has developed and we've seen what's happened to the Saints, a tough schedule suddenly became even tougher.
Yeah, Peyton Manning and Eli Manning on the road, Al.
Yeah, that's going to be wild. What if they open against the Denver Broncos on a Monday night game or something like that? That'll really be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a tough schedule. Definitely a tough schedule. But hey, if you want to be the champs, you have to beat the champs. And they have a lot of teams out there that are capable of being Super Bowl champs. And I think the Saints, we will compete. I just think we have to get our in-house thing. Once we get stable, then we'll be able to go out and perform. We can play against anyone.
Yeah, it's a first-place schedule. That's what you need to know. That's what happens when you're successful. You play a tough schedule. Now, they won't open the NFL season like they have the last 2 years with the Vikings and the Colts, but they will open the preseason with a Hall of Fame game, as you know, minus Sean Payton, William Roaf to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That will take some of the sting off of what has been a very rough offseason for the New Orleans Saints. When we return in just a moment, we'll turn our attention to the NFL Draft. And Al Dupuy of Draft Day Report as Sports NOLA TV continues from TGI Fridays. Our trivia question today for Sports NOLA TV. Tom Benson purchased the Hornets on Friday for $338 million. Our question, how much did Benson pay when he purchased the Saints from John Meekum in 1985? You've got a multiple choice. Take a look at those choices, figure it out, and give us your take on the figure. Ken Trahan, SportsNOLA.com for Sports NOLA TV at TGI Fridays, 3330 Veterans in North Holland in Metairie. The NFL Draft is coming up. It's just around the corner now. And, of course, it's always a time of great interest for the New Orleans Saints. Even though they won't have 2 picks to start the draft this year, they will have 5 after that. And clearly, it's going to be an important draft for the Saints. Al, what about this draft as a whole? Do you see it as a rich draft, a poor draft, or somewhere in between?
Pretty rich draft, and it's the defensive tackle position is probably the strongest. And that's somewhat of a need for the Saints, you know. I think that also they need a little depth at offensive guard, inside, center. So a guy like Brandon Washington would be there in the 3rd round. He's a guy from the U with long arms, big, tall guy. Really good blocker against the the speed rushers, and I think that he'll do good.
Al, of course, you do a mock draft as part of Draft Day Report, and you project the first 4 rounds in the draft, and I want to show people some of what you've got at Draft Day Report. And here's your mock draft. Talk about what you've got here and why.
Well, I think, of course, the first 2 are a given. Andrew Luck's going to go to the Colts. And, when I made the book, I was up against the clock, and I knew that they were going to trade that second pick, the Rams would, and I didn't know if it would be the Browns or the Redskins. I guessed at it. It turned out to be the Redskins, which was good. And RG3, who some people like even better than Andrew Luck. But I think Andrew Luck's probably the best quarterback to come out rating-wise since John Elway. And then you're going to Matt Khalil with the Vikings as the 3rd pick in the draft. I think that'll hold. The Browns, I think, are a guy, or the 4th pick is going to go to the Browns, and I think they're going to take the wide receiver Justin Blackmon. And then the LSU guy will go to the Buccaneers. I think Mo Claiborne will be the 5th pick. He'll go to the Buccaneers.
Brian, we get this Wonderlic test business again. It makes big news about Morris Claiborne. It's terribly unfortunate that this kind of information is leaked out when the NFL has made it clear they don't want it out there. Is this going to hurt Claiborne? What do you think about that whole scenario?
Well, Kenny, I mean, through the years, these numbers have kind of leaked out in the past, and depending on the position and the makeup of the young man in question, Mo Claiborne's a good guy. He's a smart guy from what I understand. I'm not sure about the 4 score in the Wonderlic test. Who knows what motivated him on the day that he was taking the test. But I know this, if it's a 4, he's playing a hard position. It's more than just being an athlete playing that position. He's got to be football savvy, and I think he is. So I don't think it's going to hurt him in the long run, though. Do you think so, Al, at all?
No, I don't think so. I think that, that Wonderlic thing never really hurt, especially at his position. Now, if he was a quarterback, maybe you'd have to think about it. But playing cornerback, no, it won't hurt him at all.
No, I don't think it's going to be much of anything for a guy of his caliber. Here's a guy that can run, great hips, great range, make plays on the ball. I don't think that's going to have much to do with it. And he recognizes defenses, and I mean offense. He recognizes formations and whatnot. So I think he's going to do very well in the NFL. I don't think this is going to be much of nothing. And Tampa, I think it is a good fit for him to be in Tampa because of the South, NFC South.
Al gets to do a lot of things with Draft Day Report, and of course we've asked him to give us some projections here today, including the most overrated players in the draft. Al, here's a list you compiled. Tell us why.
Well, Ryan Tannehill, of course, this happens every year where a player at the end moves up, and I think that Ryan Tannehill is a great athlete, but he's played in 20 games as a quarterback. He's a former wide receiver. I think he's going to have to sit the first year. They're talking about him going in the top 10. I think he's going to go in the first round, but I think it's overdrafting him to take him in the top 10. Vontaze Burfict is a guy with tremendous physical talent, but he's not a very smart player. He gets tons of penalties for late hits. He messes up games with his temper. He just needs to play more under control, and I think he's overrated for that reason. Shea McKellen from Boise is a guy that a lot of people think is going to go in the 2nd round. I think he's a 4th or 5th round guy. And the reason for that is at the Senior Bowl, he weighed in at just over 240 pounds. He bulked up at the combine to 260, but he has trouble holding weight. And to be a defensive end, he can't play at that weight.
Yeah.
So he'll have to switch to linebacker.
So you got Copies, and then you got LaMichael James. We know about James.
Well, James is a great player. I mean, he can run, he's fast, but when he played LSU, they pretty much shut him down. He's 190 pounds soaking wet. I think he's going to have trouble staying healthy in the NFL. At 5'9", he's going to be a spot player. He can't be a feature back. So I think he's a little overrated, and he'll be a good player, but I think he's a little overrated because of his lack of size.
Okay, since you talk about overrated players, we also have our sleeper list, and you've compiled a list of sleepers as well. Just a note or two on this list that you have.
Stephen Hill, the wide receiver from Georgia Tech's going to be a really good player. But he played in an option-type running offense. He only caught 28 balls. So Torrance, I mean, he lacks experience.
Yes.
I mean, that's the reason for that.
Yes.
He'll probably end up being a good player. Bobby Massey from Ole Miss is going to be a fine player, but he's downgraded a little bit because of lack of experience. But this guy's got long arms. He's 6'6". I think he's going to be a fine pro. Ryan Lindy from San Diego State played in a pro-style offense, so I think he's going to be able to play fairly quickly. He's got the pro arm, and I think that he's going to be a pretty good pro as a quarterback.
And then we have Malik Jackson, and we have Josh Chapman of Alabama as well. And
Chapman's downgraded because of injury, but he's a good player.
Good player. And then, of course, everybody wants to know about the New Orleans Saints. And obviously we know that the Saints don't have their first and second round picks, Al, but they do have picks in the final 5 rounds. So let's talk about your projections where the Saints are concerned.
Well, I think that Brandon Washington is a possibility there. I think that he's a guy that's versatile. He can play tackle, guard, and maybe center, and I think they look at that a lot. They can use depth there. Billy Wynn's a guy that can stuff the run and also rush the passer from Boise State. I really like Brandon Taylor from LSU. Mm-hmm. At the Senior Bowl practices that I watched, during that week, he had the hardest hit and brought oohs and ahs from all the scouts at the Senior Bowl practices. Plus, he had a pick in the game itself. So I think he can project to not only safety, but maybe corner. John Spence also maybe can go in either the 3rd or 4th round. And 2 other local guys, Ladarius Green, I think they could use depth at tight end, and he's a receiving tight end. Only weighs 237 pounds, but he's a receiving type guy that's learning how to block. And Dwight Bentley, another guy, local guy, had a really good Senior Bowl week. He jumped a lot of pass routes. He's just undersized, but I think this guy has man-pass coverage ability.
Well, if you want to get detailed information on this and much, much more, everything on the NFL draft, you need to get Draft Day Report. Rate 700 prospects, stories on all the top prospects, needs, mock draft, much more. All you need to do is send your $17 payment to Al Dupuy at 3516 Harvard Avenue in Metairie. 7006 is the place to go. That's Draft Day Report. We have ours, and we love it, and we rely on it. The New Orleans Voodoo looked very good for 3 quarters at San Antonio in the Alamo Dome. Saints might remember that place. But then in the 4th quarter, it didn't go so well as the Voodoo came up short on the road, losing to the San Antonio Talons 62-48. They got outscored 22-6 in that decisive 4th quarter. Heard Rocco play well, but not as well as he'd been playing, largely because he didn't have time to throw the ball. Aaron Garcia, the greatest quarterback in Arena Bowl history, was simply sensational again with 9 touchdown passes, and the Voodoo now 2-3 as a result. Brian, about 30 seconds, the Saints draft. You saw some of Al's projections. I kind of like Brandon Taylor, and I like Ladarius Green as well. I think those are 2 pretty good players.
I agree. I think the tight end for certain is a position they could address in the draft or rookie unsigned free agents. But I think the commonality of whoever they pick from 3 through 7, should they keep their 5 picks, you're looking at guys that are going to be special team players initially, I would think. There might be an occasional guy or one guy that comes in, but these guys are special team players looking to make the team.
Torrance, quickly?
Yeah, I like that they're thinking defense. Also, a great backup tight end and a great backup offensive line will be good. But I definitely love the safety. Is a great pick for him.
When we return, we'll discuss Tom Benson's ownership of the Saints and the Hornets on our Hot Seat segment as Sports NOLA TV continues. Our Sports NOLA TV trivia question of the evening. Tom Benson purchased the Hornets on Friday for $338 million. How much did Benson pay when he purchased the Saints from John Meekum in 1985? This is an easy one. You should get this one. Answer is B, $70 million. Boy, did he ever turn that investment over in great shape over a long period of time. And that's why you have to have confidence in Tom Benson moving forward to have success with the Hornets, which leads us into our Hot Seat segment. Ken Trahan, Sports NOLA TV. And our Hot Seat segment places Brian Allie Walsh on the hot seat with a hot topic for debate. Is it good or bad that Tom Benson now owns the two major league franchises in the city of New Orleans? Brian, the floor is yours.
Kenny, as always, thank you. Initially, when Mr. Benson's name was first broached about the possibility of becoming owner of the Hornets, I was against it for the simple fact the word monopoly comes to mind. I didn't like the idea that one gentleman or one entity was going to own two pro sports franchises in the same town. But I've softened my stance, and for $338 million, Tom Benson can do anything he wants to do. He's going to provide stability. He's going to provide long-term assurances that this club will be here for the long term, and for that I applaud him. This is the second pro franchise now that he's perhaps saved, in a sense. All right, I'm not saying that this was like the Saints back in '85, but the Hornets under an ownership that might have been someone involved from California, you don't have the same assurances that he's going to keep this franchise here. And I think with Mr. Benson at the top, providing his own money, I think it's going to provide just the stability and the long-term relief that we as pro sports fans want to see in this region. So I applaud Tom Benson. I think it's a good move.
Believe it or not, folks, I agree with Brian. Yes, I agree with Brian. At the beginning, I didn't think that this would be a great move for the organization. For one, like you said, monopoly. I just think he would have been able to have the state by the hand, by the throat. He'd have been able to hold the state hostage, basically. But with two long-term deals with the Saints as well as with the Hornets, both in long-term deals, that is out the way. I think he's the perfect match for the city. One, he knows the city, the fans love him, and I think he's able to get the support that we need out there for the team.
Al?
Well, you know, Mr. Benson, being the businessman that he is, I'm sure this was well thought out. And I think he's got a lot of plans in the future for this, not only the Hornets, but the championship square, the sports complex next door, being an all-year-round affair now with the Hornets and the Saints. And I think he's thought this out, and he's got a lot of business plans that'll enhance this thing for him and for the city. And I think it was a good move there. And I think if he was a little bit on the fence, I think his wife Gail may have pushed him over, because from what I hear, she loves basketball, and she probably wanted him to do this as well. So I think that you're going to see a lot of course, the arena getting redone, a change in the name, and they're going to tie all of this in with the sports complex next door, and it'll be a good thing for the city and for Tom Benson.
You know, I agree, Al, with your thoughts. And you know, obviously, there was a reason why this deal wasn't completed until middle of April. And I think Tom Benson all along was somebody that David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, was eyeing. And you know what? Stern's taken a lot of grief from us down here in the Bayou State, particularly in New Orleans.
And deserve it.
And deservedly so. But on the other hand, I think that this is a good move, and Stern should be applauded, because I think he got the right guy for all the right reasons. So Tom's a guy, and let's hope it works out from a win and loss standpoint, because I know that he would love to leave his legacy with another winning franchise in the NBA.
Yeah, and one thing this is going to do as well, as we've been seeing lately, we're going to start seeing some wins, because guys know things are going to be some stability to the team now. Now we can go out and bring some talent to help out Monty Williams, who's been kind of keeping this team together with all types of glue and tape and whatever it takes to get guys out there to play. So I think this is going to be a great move, not just for the city, but for him as well.
Now it's time for our judges' rendering. And in an idealistic and perfect world, you would not want this. But we do not live in an idealistic or perfect world. We live in a realistic and imperfect world. And under the guise of the reality that we live in, this is an outstanding move. It ensures the future of a franchise for a city we all love. It ensures stability and jobs. It ensures tourism. We get an all-star game in 2014 as a result of this. Look, I understand the whole concept behind monopolies and what drives competition in a free market society. That isn't going to exist now, because there is a plurality of ownership here in New Orleans. We know about Champion Square. We know about the sports and entertainment district that's going to follow. We know about LaSalle Street being closed. We know about the idea of New Orleans Arena being taken over by the Saints as a result. Ditto for the Dome already being there. We know about Benson Tower, but again, what is your solution? This is by far the best case scenario. You've got a proven commodity of a man that's willing to put up, and there's no doubt that Brian is correct. David Stern deserves an enormous amount of credit here because he fostered this. He really pushed the envelope with Tom Benson in getting him to do this, and the All-Star Game was a final piece to the puzzle to reward New Orleans with another major event. Bottom line is, it's good for New Orleans. It ensures that this franchise is going to be here. So the positives far outweigh the negatives, and on that particular topic, we all agree. This is a win for the New Orleans region. It's time now for our Marvelous Minute with our good and great friend, Marvelous Marvin LeBlanc, where you will always get inspired, where you will always be positive when you emerge from listening to what he has to say or reading what he has to say. Outstanding author and a very skilled speaker, a man that we always enjoy hearing from. Go to marvinleblanc.com/TV. Here with our Marvelous Minute is Marvin LeBlanc.
Good afternoon, Kenny and the panel. Today is a great day because today's leadership schedule is entitled Come Together Right Now Over Me. And so that's what we're having right now, a revitalization in our community where we're coming together. And in 1969, Kenny, that's when the Beatles made this song. It was also in 1969 where Ron Swoboda had the catch, Game 4, off of whose bat? Brooks Robinson. And so that New York that New York Mets team came together. Here's what Henry Ford said: coming together is a beginning. Staying together is a process. Working together is success. Right now, there's times that are going on in your workplace where people are just not working together. The team dynamics is just not where they need to be. And so right now would be a time where you might need to consider a different approach. You might need to consider someone to come in and deal with what I call the lack of unity, because, Torrance, lack of unity will destroy even the most talented teams. If that's going on in your workplace, maybe it's time to call Marvin LeBlanc at marvinleblanc.com, where we help leaders lead smarter, we help salespeople sell more effectively, and we actually allow people to have fun again in the workplace. Back to you, Kenny.
Torrance, if the Saints remain unified, they'll be successful regardless, right?
That is the key, playing together. Everybody picking up their slack. Everybody doing what they're supposed to do. A little saying I always say to my little kids when we're playing is, I don't need you to make the play all the time, but I need you to do your assignment every time.
I like it. Draft Day Report. Al Dupuy is the author. He does all the research. He's done it for how long now, Al?
Going on, this will be 32nd year.
Unbelievable. Quite a run, and you don't last that long unless you're good, and Al's very good. So we encourage you to get Draft Day Report one more time. Al Dupuy, 3516 Harvard Avenue in Metairie, 7006. It's only $17, and you get all the information you could ever want, Al, and we look forward to people taking advantage of that. We'll see you at the draft, and obviously we appreciate you being with us today. I know you enjoy it. This is your time of the year, my friend.
My time of the year, and I enjoy it. Right?
I know it. He does a great job, Brian, doesn't he?
Absolutely. When I saw him here, it reminded me that the draft is right around the corner.
And he was inspired by Marvin too, I might add.
We all
and he even
were.
remembers that Beatles song, okay?
Kenny, the word I love, and I think Torrance, we should pound it in. This is teamwork. It's all about teamwork on this band.
Teamwork, man.
That's right.
That's right.
Hey, and don't you know he rated my guy? He rated my guy up high.
So, in other words,
I like it. He rated your guy, so you like it. We'll take a time out here. We'll turn our attention to baseball. Coming back, high school, college. We'll also be joined by Mike Wagenheim of Nicholls State University when Sports NOLA TV continues from TGI Fridays in Metairie. Ken Trahan, Sports NOLA TV. Speaking of which, it's great to welcome the voice of the Nicholls State Colonels, an administrator at Nicholls State University, and a good friend who's contributed to SportsNOLA.com as well, Mike Wagenheim. Mike, it's great to see you.
Appreciate you having me here, Ken.
And good to see Nicholls State competing well in the Southland Conference.
They're doing all right. Struggled the last couple of weekends, but middle of the pack right now. And the interesting thing about this weekend with Lamar having beat nationally ranked Sam Houston last weekend, the Colonels did the same thing 2 weekends into the season. These are really two teams right now with the Colonels and the Cardinals that have their backs up against the wall. 5 weeks to go in the Southland regular season. Both teams needing to climb the ladder. It's go time for both teams, so should be a good weekend of baseball.
Nichols State positioned well in the Southland with this ever-changing landscape of intercollegiate athletics. More changes to come with Texas schools leaving. Who knows, maybe UNO eventually coming in. Bottom line is that Nichols State is positioned firmly in the Southland, and they're going to let the chips fall where they may.
It's been certainly an interesting year with the Texas schools leaving. Fortunately, it went quietly under the radar, but a couple of weeks ago, our students approved a student fee increase for our department, which is hopefully going to get us in a more level playing field with the rest of the Louisiana schools. You can never keep pace with those Texas schools, but Louisiana-wise, we'll be on better footing, and hopefully we'll be more competitive in the years to come here.
Well, the New Orleans Hornets, of course, have had a very interesting time. They just found out they've got a new owner. He expects to win, and he conveyed that message to the team prior to a Sunday night victory, of course, over the Memphis Grizzlies. Let's take a look at some of the Hornets' results, and they've been pretty good of late. Boy, they could have and maybe should have beaten the Lakers, lost by 2 on April the 9th, and then came back and took care of the Sacramento Kings, despite 25 from former Hornet Marcus Thornton of LSU. Marco Bellinelli had a good game. Jason Smith was outstanding. And then the Hornets took care of Utah. Utah needed this game in the playoff hunt. Eric Gordon makes a huge difference. You can tell now why there's great enthusiasm moving forward if they can retain his services. And then, as I alluded to, they beat Memphis by 13, holding the Grizzlies to 75 points. Another team positioned for the playoffs on a night that Tom and Gail Benson showed up and got a rousing ovation from the crowd on hand, as this was the first time that Benson appeared at a Hornets game since he had become the owner. Brian, the Hornets have won 3 straight. It's the second time this year they've done that. This team has not only not quit, they've played very well of late.
Wake up the dynasty. I'm in total agreement with you. Monty Williams and Dell Demps should be applauded for what they've done with this team this year under these circumstances. It's incredible. And I promise you, for those teams that are competing for playoff spots in the last 6 games, you better come to play, because you will get a game from the Hornets.
Yeah, you definitely get a game out. And I just want to see who we're going to get in the draft to go with Kamen, Gordon, and Smith. I think we get a couple of good draft picks in there. We got 2 number 1 picks. If we can get 2 good ones, I think we can do something.
The competition now is for the number 1 pick in the draft. Of course, it's a ball system, a lottery system with balls in a hopper. Let's take a look at the list of teams competing for that number 1 pick. Charlotte, far and away, will have the most balls in a hopper. Hornets, by the way, taking on Charlotte as we speak. The Wizards positioned firmly in that second spot. The Hornets have won too many games now to get second, and they're chasing the Kings, actually, along with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the Hornets will figure prominently, and they'll have 2 lottery selections based on the fact that the Timberwolves will not make the playoffs. Mike, I know you pay attention to the Hornets, and I know you're happy to see the Hornets being solvent now in the future here in the New Orleans market.
Absolutely, and with I think the dynamic between the Saints and the Hornets, there'll be some synergy going on there, and I think they can do a lot of cross-marketing and do some good things, take the best of both worlds and make them work for both franchises. I think it's going to be very good for the long-term future of the Hornets. 6
games remaining for the New Orleans Hornets, but only 1 game at home as we look at the remaining schedule for the Hornets. Of course, at Charlotte as we speak, then at Memphis on Wednesday. The final home game of the year against the Houston Rockets, a team battling for a playoff spot on Thursday. The Clippers and Chris Paul on the road on Sunday. And then the Hornets will move on from the Clippers to close out the season with a couple of road games as well. And that completes the Hornets slate for this year, Brian.
You know, I'm just wondering, now that Tom Benson is an NBA owner, I wonder if he can negotiate and let the Saints borrow one of those 2 lottery draft picks and move it over to the NFL draft. It would help out immensely. Tom, think about that.
Would be good. College baseball, we'll touch on Nichols in a moment, but LSU and Tulane both had pretty good weeks. As we take a look at what the Tigers and the Green Wave were able to do this past week, LSU's just really taken off. 13 of 14 wins now, swept Alabama and lead the SEC West, and they're in the top 5 nationally in the power rankings. And as a result, they're in great shape. Speaking of Lamar, the Tigers have Lamar at home on Wednesday. Then they have a gigantic series against one of the top 2 teams in the country at Lexington this weekend against Kentucky. Another major series for LSU. They just seem to overcome every obstacle that's thrown at them with a number of injuries. As for Tulane, They won 2 of 3 at UAB. They've got Southeastern Louisiana on Tuesday at Turchin, and then they host Central Florida, another good team to watch this weekend at Turchin Stadium here in New Orleans. Mike, as for Nicholls State, you talked a little bit about baseball, and clearly it's a priority. Football, of course, right around the corner, spring just taking place. How does your football season look forthcoming?
We're going to find out. Our spring game is coming up on Saturday. It'll precede the baseball game. Spring game gets underway at 11 a.m. So if you're coming for the baseball game, come a little bit early. We're shorthanded right now. Still trying to make it work, offensive line, defensive line. So it's not going to be a full scrimmage. I think Charlie Stubbs is going to wait until the summer and might try to find another quarterback to get into the mix. Time will tell as far as Nicholls football goes. We just have to make sure we stay healthy. If we don't stay healthy, it's going to be a long fall.
Yeah, men's basketball program, a little bit of a struggle this past year after a really good year. Anatoly Bo's doing well on the professional level, and the women's program really making progress.
I'll tell you, Doobie Plaisance has done a phenomenal job with that women's program. Almost doubled her win total every year for 4 consecutive seasons. That program is on the rise. They're going to be competing year after year. J.P. Piper last year was a rebuilding year for the men's team, and they had just one senior, and even he only played 4 games before going down with an injury. It's a rebuilding year. I think the coming year will be a true test, and I think they're going to be all right.
More than 33,000 were on hand at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome Saturday night for the Monster Energy AMA Supercross. In the main event, Ryan Villapoto won for the 9th time in 14 races this season. He has already clinched his 2nd straight Supercross class championship. In the lights class, Darren Durham picked up his first career victory. Justin Barcia finished 4th, but that was enough to clinch his 2nd straight title. Prior to the event, our own Adam Bandera got the chance to ride along with a camera specially mounted to the helmet. Let's take a look. Feel the bumps there. It felt like a 3D ride. I'm sure you've been on one of those simulators, Brian.
I tell you, I need one of those airplane bags, I think. But I tell you, I take my hats off to Adam. He did it.
He did a great job. And we'll take a time out here. When we return in just a moment, we'll put a wrap on things as Sports NOLA TV continues from TGI Fridays in Metairie. In here, it's always Friday. TGI Fridays at 3330 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. And you can call 887-7788 to enjoy the outstanding ambiance, the outstanding food, the outstanding fellowship, and the outstanding workmanship here at TGI Fridays, 3330 Veterans in Metairie, corner of North Holland.
It was pretty tough on Peyton. I think one thing most people that know him will say about him, he's a pretty loyal guy, and 14 years in that city, and for them to do what they did, they truly changed the culture in Indianapolis in regard to football, and brought a winner there, went to a couple of Super Bowls, won a ton of games, a bunch of division titles, and they were just winners for a long time, and so. You know, football takes a lot of funny turns, and for him to he'd been healthy his whole career, to hurt his neck, have a bunch of surgeries, miss a whole year, that they fall apart that year, and gonna have the #1 pick in the draft, some really good quarterbacks. All those circumstances ended up meaning he had to leave Indianapolis.
Next week, Archie Manning on Eli, Peyton, Sean Payton, bounties, and more here on Sports NOLA TV. Ken Trahan from TGI Fridays. And Brian, it's still mind-boggling that he has 2 sons that have now won a combined 3 Super Bowls and continue to excel at their craft.
You know, what he's done for this community from our standpoint is just amazing. They're just a great family, and couldn't be happier for Archie. He's one of the best.
Nice to have hometown heroes succeeding at all times, Torrance.
Oh, it's always great. Something to get the youth to look up to. And great role models. I think they had a great role model in their father to raise them and install some great values in them.
Mike, we've had a lot of guys from Nicholls State that have excelled. Ladarius Webb is having a tremendous NFL career for the Ravens right now.
Picked up a big contract. He's on his way to the big time. Ladarius doing a terrific job, and all of those players that have went on to the NFL are representing Nicholls very well on and off the field right now.
Mike, remind everybody about Nicholls State's website that everybody can obtain athletics information at.
GoColonels.com is the official website. That's GEAUX. GoColonels.com. Want to let you know we got a couple big fundraisers coming up. Thursday, May 10th, a golf fundraiser at the Atchafalaya at Ottawa in Patterson. And then on the 24th, our annual seafood extravaganza are two big fundraisers for the spring. So check out that information, GEAUX, GoColonels.com.
GoColonels.com, and tell our friend Rob Bernardi hello too. He does a great job, and I know you enjoy working with him.
He's outstanding, outstanding.
And it's been an interesting week to say the least, Brian, where the Saints are concerned. You know, I guess let's just get this player business behind us and turn the page. Really kind of weary of this whole situation.
Boy, never would you have thought last year with the lockout and everything that something would surpass. But over the last 6 weeks to 2 months, it's been incredible. And as we've said on the panel today, is that it's not over. So stay tuned.
And as for the Alcorn Braves,
We have Nicholls. You have the honor of playing my great alma mater.
And defeating them.
like everybody else.
He had to be talking to Brian to cut me like that. He had to be talking to Brian. But we will see. We will see.
It's a heck of a deal. Mike, thank you for being with us. We deeply appreciate it. Good to have you with us today. Keep up the great work in Thibodaux. Brian, is always a pleasure. SportsNOLA.com for all of his work, Torrance Small.
Yes, we appreciate those payments too.
You bet. All right. Next week, Archie Manning. We'll also have Kenny Bordelon. And you want to join us next week. Until then, I'm Ken Trahan saying thanks for joining us and be a good sport. God bless you one and all. We are rounding third and heading home. So long.